All right, let me do a quick introduction, folks. First of all, thank you to FX Street for hosting this webinar. It's very important that you get proper information. There's a lot of changes going on in the world of Forex, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of amateurs trying to make professional, interpretation of all these different laws coming through. And it's very important that we bring in a specialist. Now, first of all, the title of this presentation is Navigating the NFA Registration. So we're targeting a very specific part of the new changes. But, I found that over the last few months, a lot of questions have come up from retail traders. Just a month or so ago, we were worried that it was the end of our business. All right? So that's really how I came across Investment Law Group and met with Brent. And I'll tell you about that in a little second. But this particular presentation is for those that are trading other people's money or plan on trading other people's money in the United States. So this is a complicated issue. This is a professional subject. And so, Brent and his firm are going to provide a lot of information and helpful advice. But at the end of the day, you need to hire an expert, and you should hire them if you are trading other people's money and you need guidance to these complicated times. Hopefully we've had an opportunity to meet. My name is Wayne McDonald. I'm with FX Bootcamp. How many people have attended my webinars here at FX Street? Just Harley, huh? Yeah, like pretty much everybody. Yeah, don't forget non-farm payroll's coming up. Hint, hint, hint. Well, it's really good to see you, and I'm glad you guys are here. Anyways, you know me, most likely. If not, again, my name is Wayne McDonald. I'm the Chief Currency Coach of FXBootcamp.com. That little CTA next to my name means I'm a commodities trading advisor, which means the National Futures Association has deemed me an expert in technical and fundamental analysis for Forex and for commodities. My organization, FXBootcamp.com, as you probably know, provides live training and analysis of the Forex market. And we do this 15 hours a day. So we teach you how to trade and be a trader, doing technical and fundamental analysis and helping you through the psychological challenges of being a trader day in and day out. We cover the Asian market live. We cover the pre-European market live. We cover the European market live, the London lunch pre-New York sessions live, and we also cover the New York session live. So again, at least 15 hours a day. So if you want to know more about FXBootcamp.com, guess what? Go to FXBootcamp.com. If I haven't had an opportunity to meet you either at FX Street via non-farm payrolls, you probably met me at their conference in Barcelona, or I speak a lot on TV. So if this is our first opportunity to meet each other, it's my pleasure. And remember, the bottom line, working with FX Street, we sit around thinking about different ways that we can provide support to you. And there are many different ways you can get them. Before I started FX Bootcamp, I'd log on to FX Street every single day. That's the bottom line. FX Street's enjoying their 10-year anniversary. 10 years of helping Forex traders, very important. So bravo to them. Now, I do want to introduce the speaker and also how this all came together. I'm starting a fund, and I gave Brent a call. He's an expert in securities law and the Forex industry specifically. And so I called him and his firm, Investment Law Group, and I said, I need some help starting this fund. Great. So we start to talk, and very, very quickly it's obvious that he's extremely knowledgeable in what's going on in the industry. And I said, hey, I lead a community of Forex traders, and we're really worried that it's the end of the retail Forex trading industry. A lot of changes happening with the Dodd-Frank bill, and and we're really scared that the leverage is going to be reduced to 10 to 1, and that would be a game killer for us. And so I said, could you come to FX Bootcamp and speak to us and help us interpret all these different changes that were on the way? And so he came and spoke and clarified all these changes just right before the leverage change was announced. So it was fantastic to really get an expert and professional's advice on all these complicated issues. And now we know that leverage was not reduced to 10 to 1, but 50 to 1. And that was, a thank goodness moment for me, because really 50 to 1 doesn't change anything. It really doesn't. If you're a conservative, disciplined trader, if you're a professional trader, 50 to 1 is better than what you're getting in futures and in options. So really, it's good. I can live with that. It's really good. You can make a living at 50 to 1. So that's really nice. But packed within all these changes are other changes. And I say, aha. And so Brett and I were talking on a follow-up call, and he said, professional traders need to get registered. I'm like, wow. And I'm like, what's a professional trader? And we're talking about those who are trading other people's money. Even if it's, you only got one client, maybe it's your next door neighbor, maybe it's your mother, changes are coming down the pipeline, and new regulations and laws concerning anyone trading other people's money. And I said, you know what? This is a big deal because not enough people know what these changes are, what to do, what needs to be done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, you know what? We need to get the word out beyond just FX Bootcamp. We need to get the word out to the world. And so I contacted FX Street and said, you know what? We need to bring in Brent and the investment law group to help all Forex traders around the world, especially those that either are trading other people's money or plan on trading other people's money. They need to sit down with a professional and get the information. And so we put this seminar together, and I think it's going to be incredibly valuable. Absolutely incredibly valuable if you plan on being a professional trader, trading beyond just your own funds. So without further ado, Brent Gillett and the Investment Law Group. Thank you. Enjoy.
Very thankful to FX Street for the opportunity to make this presentation. Over the past few months, we've gotten a lot of calls from clients and prospective clients who are very concerned about the implications of the new CFTC regulatory regime. And with that in mind, we designed the following presentation to provide Forex advisors with an understanding of the NFA registration process, as well as an overview of all the compliance infrastructure that the CFTC and the NFA will require once you're actually registered. Although we've geared the presentation primarily towards professional traders who are either managing capital for outside investors now or who are very seriously thinking about doing that, we also welcome retail investors to participate so they can learn more about the requirements that your advisors are going to be subject to, so that you can make sure that you're making an educated decision and are working with advisors who are in compliance. This is very important because the NFA can shut down Forex advisors who are not in compliance, and it could have a dramatic impact on your account if they're unable to trade and the trading strategies are interrupted. So after the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A session. We're going to try to keep the presentation fairly brief, just touching on the high points so that we have time to answer everybody's questions. And we welcome everybody, including retail investors, to ask any questions about materials that we covered or materials that we didn't cover. So today, we're going to talk about our firm, who we are. We'll discuss the final rules that became effective on October 18th. As well as all the rules that will become effective next year. We'll discuss who's required to register as a CTA or as a CPO or potentially as both, as well as the exemptions from registration. We're going to discuss the registration process itself, what's involved. We'll cover some war stories and our experience dealing with the regulators. We'll explain what you're required to do on an ongoing basis so that you can remain in compliance. And then we'll end with a Q&A session. Our firm is a boutique. 100% of our practice is focused on the investment management industry. I started the firm about 9 years ago. I left a big firm. We had probably about 700 attorneys when I was there. And I just got tired of the big firm lifestyle and set up this boutique with the view that we would represent only investment managers. And I've scaled the firm. We have offices in New York, Atlanta, on the West Coast, D.C., and are actually in the process of trying to open some offices in London right now. 100% of the practice, as I said, is focused on investment management. Within that space, a lot of the work, especially the recent work we've been handling, has been in and around representing Forex advisors, commodity trading advisors, commodity pool operators, helping them with establishing their businesses, whether it's for a separately managed account platform or creating pooled investment vehicles, and then handling all the ongoing legal and compliance matters that might impact these guys as they're building their business. So as I've said, I've been practicing for about 15 years, and look forward to trying to be a resource to any of you that may have questions. Feel free to email me after the call. Our firm's website is investmentlawgroup.com, and you can find my contact information there on the website under the Contact Us tab. So give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm very accessible, and we'll try to help however I can. So with that said, let's dig right in. Unlike the securities and commodities markets, the Forex market has largely been unregulated. Many of us have called it the Wild West, the last frontier. Ever since I guess it was 2000, the CFMA was promulgated, which specifically allowed retail Forex trading. After this occurred, the CFTC tried a number of times to actually regulate off-exchange retail Forex, and many of you are familiar with the seminal court case Zellner, in which case the Sixth Circuit stated that the CFTC did not have jurisdiction to regulate off-exchange retail Forex. This later prompted Congress to enact, through the Farm Bill, certain laws to clarify that the CFTC does indeed have jurisdiction over what they called futures lookalike contracts, which we commonly call spot Forex. A couple years went by. The CFTC, for whatever reason, did not act. They did not promulgate any rules under the authority granted through the Farm Bill, and it took an act of Congress, the legislation that was just passed, the Graham-Dodd bill, to really galvanize them to action, and thus we've seen the new rules. So who's been affected by the new regulations? Initially, the CFTC was focusing on RFEDs, retail foreign exchange dealers, and FCMs by phasing in significant net capital requirements. Historically, the retail foreign exchange dealers were able to conduct their retail business with only $1 million in net capital. Now they have to have $20 million. I think most of us think that this is a good thing. Not overly paternalistic to require a lot of the fly-by-night firms and thinly capitalized firms to get out of the business. I had a client that was a hedge fund operator who lost about $6 million doing business with one counterparty that was thinly capitalized, and hopefully these new laws will protect all of us who want to trade Forex. The next and most recent focus moved beyond the counterparties, and the focus was on IBs and advisory firms. And in a way that I think most of us feel is overly paternalistic, the regulation changed the way that retail investors can trade Forex by reducing leverage and restricting certain hedging strategies, including the first in, first out policy, which was very controversial, requiring counterparties to close offsetting positions based on the order in which they were opened. It's important to note that the leverage and hedging restrictions don't apply to non-retail or institutional investors, which fall outside the definition of eligible contract participants. An ECP is an individual or entity with greater than 10 million of assets, or an NFA registered commodity pool with at least 5 million in assets. And I realize that most people probably on this call don't meet the definition of ECP, so unfortunately they have been affected by the hedging and leverage restrictions. So to end on this slide, the most immediate impact for professional Forex advisors is that anyone who is advising retail clients is going to have to register as a CTA or CPO if the clients are based in the U.S. And this has to be done by October 18th. Any Forex advisors who are not registered by this date will have to halt their trading activities, which obviously could create a big problem for your clients. As I mentioned, we geared the presentation to professional traders who advise retail customers, and with that in mind, I'm going to discuss specifically what's involved with registering as a CTA or a CPO, and will provide you with an overview of what's involved from an ongoing standpoint to maintain the registration. Essentially, there's two ways to manage money, either through a separately managed account structure, commonly known as a PAM structure or PAM platform, and the other way is to manage money through a pooled investment vehicle. The CTA registration is required for separately managed account managers, and a CPO is required if you manage a pool. There are a lot of benefits, in my opinion, to managing money through a pooled investment vehicle. One major benefit is that it's much more tax efficient potentially for the manager. Certain CPAs take the position that spot Forex contracts are eligible for the 60/40 tax treatment. Although this is not, 100% clear it's somewhat controversial, but I think that it has not been specifically challenged by the IRS, and a lot of traders are still taking this position. And what's so intriguing about managing money through a pooled investment vehicle is that the performance fee associated with the vehicle is actually going to be taxed at the same rate, the 60/40 rate, that the underlying investors will be taxed at. So that's a major, major tax benefit. Potentially, 15 to 20% savings for the manager depending on the jurisdiction. And I can get, more into that later if anyone has any specific questions. Secondly, when you manage a lot of separately managed accounts, it usually results in a higher level of maintenance. Customers will email you, they'll call you when the account's up, when the account's down. So it definitely can result in a higher level of customer service on the manager's side. And lastly, it's possible for traders traders often wish to maintain proprietary systems and keep these systems as trade secrets. And if you use a separately managed account structure, it's possible that your system could be reverse engineered. Probably unlikely, but that's one of the reasons that a lot of our clients actually opt to establish their businesses using pooled investment vehicles. Now, the customers, your clients, are typically going to prefer separately managed accounts for the obvious reasons of transparency and liquidity. So from a marketing standpoint, it's probably easier to get started, building your business, but you have the disadvantages that we just mentioned. Another benefit, and we'll get into this in a minute, is that if you have fewer than 15 accounts, you can actually rely on an exemption from registration. And that's actually 15 clients, not 15 accounts. If you have fewer than 15 clients over a 12-month period, you can rely on an exemption from registering as a CTA. And so a lot of Forex advisors who don't have many accounts are going to be able to rely on this exemption until they actually pass the Series 34 and the 3 and have their disclosure documents approved by the NFA. And while we're talking, feel free to go ahead and post any questions that you have, and we'll come back to these. So just feel free to go ahead and lob your questions in while you're thinking about them. So a lot of the questions we've gotten lately has been, what licenses do I need and when do I need to be licensed? So essentially, anyone who is an associated person with a CTA or a CPO has to pass both the Series 3 and the 34 examinations in order to register as a CTA or CPO, or as an associated person of a CTA or CPO. The NFA defines an AP as someone who solicits orders, customers or customer funds, or supervises someone else who's soliciting orders on behalf of an FCM, an IB, a CTA, or a CPO. So in effect, anyone who's a salesperson or who supervises salespersons for any of these categories would actually have to pass those exams. And this is interesting. We have one client who has several hundred retail Forex accounts, and he's going to have to get registered as a CTA by the 18th, but the concern was whether or not he had to have disclosure documents actually approved by the NFA by that date for his existing clients, which could really create a big problem. And we've spoken with an attorney at the CFTC and someone in compliance at the NFA, and they've confirmed that although you need to take the Series 34 exam by the 18th to continue managing retail accounts, you don't need to submit disclosure documents as long as you're not bringing in new assets from existing investors or soliciting new clients. So that'll give some of you some breathing room with regard to this whole registration process. And I see a question here. This is only for managing. Is this only for people managing funds in the U.S.? That's correct. Non-U.S. clients would not be impacted. But if you're actually based in the U.S. and have all non-U.S. clients, I think you'd be able to rely on an exemption. I know that if you created a pooled investment vehicle, you would be able to rely on an exemption from registration regardless of the net worth of your clients, even if you're based in the U.S., as long as all of your investors are not in the U.S. And I'm pretty certain that the same logic would apply in the case of a CTA, and we'll confirm that in a memo that will circulate after this call. The registration process is fairly straightforward. Essentially, it involves submitting various forms through the NFA basic system and paying fees. I think it's around $1,000, and then your membership dues. What is really time consuming is the process to have all your marketing materials reviewed by the NFA, as well as the disclosure documents and client account agreements. So that can take, in our experience, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. I don't think the NFA has made too many new hires after this new legislation was passed, so they're probably inundated with applications right now, but hopefully they'll be able to turn around the applications and reviews in a reasonable time period. Okay, I'm going to take a look at a couple of these questions. Why couldn't the spot Forex industry in the U.S. create its own regulatory authority that senses the needs of traders? You know, that's a pretty good idea. I don't think there is a really strong trade association. Bob Green and I have sponsored a traders association, but it probably makes a lot of sense to start a trade association geared specifically towards the Forex industry. Maybe, Wayne, you and I can talk about that after this call and explore ways that we might be able to create some kind of lobby. So let me ask a question, just so I'm making sure I'm gearing the presentation to an audience that's interested in potentially registering. Are most of you or some of you on the call considering managing money professionally, or do some of you currently manage money for outside investors now? Okay, we have at least one person who's considering it, so I'll continue on. So here's one, especially if we can find a loophole on the whole 50-to-1 thing. If you manage money through a pooled investment vehicle and you register as a commodity pool operator with the NFA, the hedging and leverage restrictions will not actually apply. Unfortunately, though, that's going to change in a year, in which case all the investors in the pool have to be ECP. So although registering and setting up a CPO is one way to avoid the hedging and leverage restrictions, it's going to be a short-lived solution. So at this point, there's really not a good loophole that I'm aware of to avoid the 50-to-1 leverage. After next year, the definition of ECP, which is an eligible contract participant, is going to change. So currently, eligible contract participants are not subject to the hedging or leverage restrictions. An eligible contract participant, again, is a person who has a net worth of $10 million or a commodity pool with at least $5 million in assets. And what's going to change next year is it's not going to be sufficient for a commodity pool to merely have $5 million in total assets. The law will be modified such that all the participants in the pool themselves are going to have to be ECPs, which means all the investors in the fund are going to have a $10 million net worth. And any non-ECP participants if there are any non-ETP participants in the fund, then the fund itself will not be an ETP. So for a short period of time, there is a way to avoid the hedging and leverage restrictions if you register as a commodity pool operator and you have $5 million in assets in the fund. So here's a question. Does the 15 or less client exemption include all clients and or family and friends? Also, if you keep your client base to 15 or less, do you ever need to register? Well, as long as you keep your client base to less than 15, then you can avoid registration. But the key is that you not hold yourself out to the public as an investment advisor or, a Forex advisor. That means no websites. You really want to be, you really shouldn't have any collateral material. So that is one potential way to avoid registration. So I think what we should talk about now is the fact that the same exemptions from registration that would apply to CTAs would also apply to Forex advisors who have to register as CTAs. So essentially, there is an exemption from registration for CTAs who have fewer than 15 clients. If you manage a pooled investment vehicle, it's not just family and friends. It would be 15 total, including family and friends. And again, you're probably limited to family and friends because you can't hold yourself out to the public, and you're really not supposed to be doing this professionally. So I think the spirit of the rule is that it would primarily be limited to family and friends. The other exemptions that a pool operator can rely on would be, one, a very small pool. If there's less than $400,000 in the pool, then you can apply for an exemption, and the $400,000 does not include the assets of the manager himself or his family. There's a closely held pool exemption, which essentially says that as long as the operator does not receive any type of compensation and does not advertise, that you can avoid registration. And lastly, if all these investors in the pool are what are called QEPs, meaning they have a $5 million net worth or greater, you can avoid registration. It'll be interesting to see how this exemption plays out, given the fact that the law is going to change to require ECPs, only eligible contract participants, to be in the pool. I'm going to answer a few questions now. Do sub-accounts under the same trader count as managing multiple clients? Yes. If you have sub-accounts, but the ultimate beneficiaries of these sub-accounts are different people, then they would count as separate clients. You can't set up a single master account and then have sub-accounts that are being traded for the benefit of another person. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but ultimately each beneficial owner of the sub-account would count as a person. Why is it that futures and forex accounts in the U.S. are not insured or secured? That's a good question. That I think is problematic and is one of the reasons that we should consider creating a trade association so that we can lobby to have these kinds of accounts included. So, I don't know why, but historically that's been the situation, and I know that's one of the benefits of trading outside of the U.S. Next question. If I'm an IB and give rebates to my clients but don't trade their accounts, do I have to register too? This is a very, very interesting question. I assume that you're trying to provide liquidity, so it's like a straight through. You have a relationship with a foreign bank, and you want to provide straight through processing to your clients, and there are probably some kinds of volume discounts that you're able to provide. That is unclear. I would say that if you're an IB and you are working with a U.S.-based RFED or FCM, then you're definitely going to have to register. If you're acting as an IB for a non-U.S. bank, for instance, I think it's unclear, and that's actually something we're looking into for prospective clients this afternoon, and we'll circulate information about that in a Q&A. So another question. If I'm outside of the U.S., my clients too, and neither I nor my clients are U.S. citizens, must I register? If you're outside the U.S. and none of your clients are U.S. citizens, then you don't need to worry about registering. What is the likelihood of relaxing the CFTC or Dodd-Frank laws once the midterm elections are over? Good question. I'm not going to prognosticate about this, but I think that if we could create some kind of, trade association, perhaps we could have an impact on a new administration. So, that's, I think, something that we should look into. But I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that the laws might be relaxed. Is it true that futures brokers want to get rid of retail traders? I have a theory that this is probably one of the major drivers for the new legislation. Clearly, a lot of the folks in Chicago have been losing money due to the off-exchange retail Forex industry. And there's no question that they have a very strong and entrenched lobby, and most certainly had an impact on this new legislation. But all I do or my clients do is put my name on the registration form of, say, FXCM. That's the IB question. Yeah, we'll come back to to that question related to the IB. Send me an email after the call, and we can have a direct conversation about that issue. What if you're in the U.S. but your account is in the U.K. or Australia? We get this question a lot. Many of our clients have asked if there was a way to set up an offshore account through a BVI or Cayman corporation, for instance, to avoid the leverage restrictions. And from what we can tell, there's nothing specifically prohibiting you as a retail investor from opening an account with a foreign, clearing firm or bank. Now, a year from now, those clearing firms are going to have to register with the CFTC as FCMs or RFEDs in order to continue conducting business with U.S. persons. Right. So on October 18th of this year, you can continue to do business with banks. And from a practical standpoint, enforcement's going to be very difficult. I question the U.S.'s resolve and capability to actually go after, non-U.S. based FCMs who do business with retail clients in contravention of the current regulations. So again, we're not encouraging this kind of activity, but I'm saying that from a practical standpoint, if you get an account open, there's nothing that we found in the legislation that would make it illegal from the investor's perspective. So when will all the spot FX brokers become futures brokers one day soon? So I think that maybe that's a possibility, but as you know, the spot Forex market and the futures market, trade differently. So I think we're going to see the two, coexist. A lot of the futures firms are and have registered as RFEDs. We've seen firms like Interactive Brokers, some time ago, registering. So I think we're going to see a lot of competition from existing broker-dealers and futures firms that want to, play in this market. Does any of this apply to foreign traders with accounts with U.S. brokers? My understanding is that if you're a foreign trader, the U.S. brokers do not need to be concerned about the same restrictions that would apply if you're a U.S. person. Here's a question. Do corporations with multiple shareholders count as a single investor, single client? The answer is yes. If you set up a corporation and have multiple shareholders, you essentially become a commodity pool operator, or Forex pool operator to be more precise, as opposed to managing separately managed accounts, which would require registration as a CTA, and that throws you into a whole different section of the regulations, and we'd have to go back to see if you fit within either the small pool exemption, the closely held exemption, or the exemption that allows you to avoid registration if all of your investors are very high net worth. Can you trade a system with 2 or 3 friends or family funds and get a percentage of the profit? Yes, you can. If you have fewer than 15, friends or family members, and you don't hold yourself out to the public, then you would be able to trade and remain exempt from registration. If you're a U.S. citizen, can you have an account with a broker, say in Cyprus? So again, we're just as I mentioned, there's nothing in the regulations that prohibits that from the retail perspective standpoint, but the broker in Cyprus would need to register by the 18th as an RFED unless they're actually a bank, in which case they have another 9 months. So at some point, 9 months from now, any brokers who conduct business with retail investors acting as a counterparty to spot Forex transactions are going to have to register, or they'll operate, in contravention of U.S. law. Again, what can happen? I don't think, anyone has a sense of how aggressive the CFTC would be in terms of enforcing its rules with non-U.S. brokers. Here's a question. Will the 50-to-1 leverage be changed 1 year after October 18th? No, that's going to stay. The 50-to-1 leverage is what it is. The rules passed, so I don't see it changing. Another question, do these rules apply to foreign traders with accounts at U.S. brokers? If it's just your own funds, I don't believe that the U.S. brokers, as long as you can prove that you're not a U.S. person, I don't believe that they would enforce the hedging and leverage restrictions. But from a practical standpoint, their systems may not be set up to effectively manage the 2 different classes, and they may ask that you establish your account with a non-U.S. Counterpart of their firm. So I'm going to just talk about a few additional questions that we've been asked. I think we've actually covered. We've covered a lot of these. I'm just looking. We had put together a list of questions that other clients and individuals had asked. So I'm just going through the questions to see if there's anything that we haven't covered. Well, it seems like a lot of the audience are really more focused about trading their own accounts. But I'm happy to take more speak more specifically about what's involved in setting up as a CTA or CPO. After the call, if there's anything that we didn't cover, and I think it probably makes a lot of sense to look into forming a trade association sooner than later to represent the voice of the Forex industry. Why weren't we given time to form that association? Unfortunately, there probably was time, and no one was proactive enough. The spot Forex market and participants is very widely distributed, and unlike the futures industry, which has been around for much longer, there really was never a movement. And back in '08, probably would have been a good time to have begun the process, but better late than never. I would not recommend the CFA exam necessarily in terms of if you want to be a Forex advisor. It's a pretty grueling 3-year undertaking. It's a great credential, and I think it'll give you a lot of credibility if you're serious about becoming a professional manager. But it's a 3-year process, very difficult exam, and it covers mostly topics that have nothing to do with Forex. But there are lots of I would recommend that you go ahead and take the Series 34 as a first step. And it certainly wouldn't make you a better trader. I agree with Wayne. Well, that's basically what I wanted to cover today. I hope this has been, informative. I'm happy to stay on the line, answer, any other questions that we might not have covered. And also, feel free to send me, emails, give me a call, you can send your questions to Wayne and he'll get them to me. But, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of questions that come up that we didn't cover, and we're here to try to help. A lot of this is uncharted territory, and we might not be able to answer the question right away, but we can generally get the answer within a day or two. I'm going to hand the mic back to Wayne.
All right, thank you very much, Brent. Really appreciate it. It's incredibly valuable to have someone as knowledgeable as you to come in and go through all these changes and all these laws and all the details and make it absolutely clear. I really do appreciate that, and I'm sure everyone else in the room does too. Because what I find is the vast majority of people at FX Street and even FX boot campers, they're currently trading their own money, but a lot, if the vast majority of those do have it as a goal to either in the near term or in the long term trade other people's money. So all these changes are absolutely phenomenal. And you also have to realize that I recognize 3/4 of the people in this room, and they've been at FX Street for years, and so there's some very accomplished traders here that are trading other people's money. Absolutely. So fantastic to be here. And also, hey, thank you FX Street for hosting another fabulous webinar. So if you have any other questions for Brent or myself, now's the time to get it out there. I am a registered introducing broker, and I am a registered commodities trading advisor. So I've been through the registration process for both of those things. I have ponied up the net capital requirements. I have taken the Series 3 test. I have created anti-money laundering policies and disaster recovery plans, disclosure documents. I've gone through on-site audits with the CTA, with the NFA, where 5 or 6 officers flew up from Chicago and went through my home office and went through all my trades and downloaded all my trading records onto their flash drives. And I file monthly reports, quarterly reports, annual reports, audited annual reports. So I can also help as well. Yeah, but it's important because, look, let me show you my personal opinion. If you trade other people's money and you're not registered, then you're still not a professional trader, in my humble opinion. Like, why wouldn't you register as a CTA? Why, the test is too hard? Then you don't deserve to be trading other people's money. I mean, come on. So if you're legit, get registered. What's the big deal? Oh, but it's $1,000 a year to be a member of the NFA. Come on. But it's a big deal. It's a hard test. I think the last time I heard, 70% of the professionals that take the test fail. And it's a tough test because they don't test you to make sure you know what you know. They test you to fail you. They assume you already know everything. So, you should take it, okay? If you're a legitimate trader, then you need to register. I don't know anyone besides friends, family, and fools that would invest money with you if you're not registered and regulated by the National Futures Association in the United States. But let's see, do futures trading firms have to register? Anyone that, futures trading firm? Well, like one of the things I have to do as a CTA is I have to register right now with the National Futures Association as a Forex trading business. So we had to do the paperwork for that. That was part of the Dodd-Frank bill, just the random things that we have to go through. So that had to be done. I've been a CTA long enough where I'm exempt from having to take the Series 34, so that's good. Otherwise, like David Pegler, for example, he's an associated person with FX Bootcamp. So he is listed under the CTA firm as an associated person. You guys know David Begler. And so now he has to go take the Series 34. He's passed the Series 3. Now he has to do the Series 34 because he's non-exempt. And then I have to list FX Bootcamp as being a Forex business. And, it's very interesting. Yeah, and then Brent's asking here, this is a very interesting idea to start an association that can work with the CFTC, the NFA, and Washington, D.C. It's a very interesting idea. I'll give you an example, and don't tell anybody, all right, between you and me. Years ago, I had lunch with a bunch of commodity trading advisors at a CTA meeting in Chicago. And while we're having lunch, in between this big speeches and stuff, they had the head of the CFTC come out and do a big speech. And his topic was self-regulation. And by the way, guys, this must have been 4 or 5 years ago, before the big crash, right? And his big speech was the self-regulation, self-policing policies of the CFTC and the NFA, where made them very efficient, is what they were saying. And he gave this example like that, how nobody lost money under this new the way that the CFTC had been managing under this self-policing policy. Nobody ever lost money. And then he cited Refco as an example. You guys remember Refco? And he said, see, Refco blew up and nobody lost money. Do you guys remember Refco? Seriously, how many people remember this? This might have been 5, maybe even 6 years ago. And so I raised my hand, I stood up and I said, well, excuse me, sir, but I'm a Forex trader. And when Refco went down, I personally know a lot of Forex traders that lost money when Refco blew up. And he chuckled and he said, oh, well, that's Forex. That's over the counter. And it was almost like, and this was the guy in charge of regulating my industry. So I grabbed my stuff and I walked out right in front of him. I walked right out, walked out of the door. How dare you? The guy that regulates my business, my industry, whatever, it's only Forex. And he didn't care that the fact that thousands of people lost money. He didn't even count it as losing money because it was only Forex traders. So, I think there is room to have an association to go out there and make sure we're represented, because at that point all I could possibly do is protest by getting up and walking out in front of the head of the CFTC and say, well, I'm done. I'm going home. So that's how I feel. And you need representation. So I'm into it. I love the idea. Okay? What else is on your mind, guys? But I love the idea, though, Brent. We should probably set up a board, all that kind of stuff. Is CTA title something that a foreign trader can do? Well, I believe if you are trading U.S. money, you'll need to be registered as a CTA. And actually, one of the tricks is to get your CTA, pass your Series 3 test is one of the major requirements. So very often when you say CTA, people are talking Series 3, but if you take your Series 3 test in a foreign country, they assume you don't speak English. They give you another hour. And the vast majority of the people that fail the test, and the majority of people do fail the test, the vast majority of people fail the test because there's not enough time. There is not enough time to pass the test. So if you're English speaking and you take the test, offshore, you're probably going to pass, where if you took the test in the United States, you're probably going to fail. Well, Donnie, the difference is CTA and Series 3. I think anyone can take a Series 3, but not anyone can become a CTA. Okay. It's a hard test, though. So honestly, even if you're trading just your next door neighbor's money, you're trading your mom's money, I think you should take the Series 3. as far as direct Forex trading knowledge or whatnot, it doesn't depart that much on you. There's just a tiny, maybe 1% of the test talks about Forex, maybe 3% of the test talks about technical analysis. But the rest of the test is very interesting. If you're interested in global macroeconomics, and that's what a Forex trader is, by the way, under the category of hedge funds, there are multiple types of hedge funds, and Forex traders are under global macro. Okay? So, if you truly are serious about being a Forex trader and consider yourself a professional trader, even if you're just trading your own money, take the Series 3 because you're going to learn a lot about not necessarily just global macroeconomics. It's more internal. It has to do with, hedging and commodities and what a grain elevator operator would do to, when he's buying grain from farmers, what he would do to hedge. And they talk about futures and options and stuff, for hedging, commodity exposure and intermarket and intramarket strategies. And, it's very interesting, and it would make you much more knowledgeable outside the world of Forex. And one of the things that I tend to think that is one of my strengths is understanding how the global money machine works. So I'm watching the 10-year T-note, or like today I'm watching oil, and because of oil, I'm doing something else. And I understand these relationships between the 10-year T-note and gold and oil and all these different things, and how that'll affect currencies and the options market, the futures market, and how it all comes together. It's very interesting. I don't think it would be a waste of your time to take a Series 3 test, even if you have no really plans of being a CTA or a CPO. But if you consider yourself a professional, it would be nice to say that, maybe you trade your mom's money and you pass the Series 3. I mean, that would be interesting. So go ahead and get it done. Okay? The other piece of advice that I have for you is if you are trading other people's money, you need to be incorporated. You need to get some certification and get registered and all that kind of stuff. Get Brent's firm to set up a corporation for you. Like, bare minimum, get incorporated, because you're going to get the taxation advantages are superior to anything else. Get incorporated. Even if you're just trading your own money, but you're doing well, get incorporated. I mean, the tax advantages alone are vastly superior. Get incorporated. Get Brent to set up a corporation for you, right? Immediately. And then if you are trading other people's money, even if it's just 2 or 3 other clients, get registered anyways. Who cares what the loss, or, I don't have to be registered if I have less than 15 clients. Well, what are you scared about? You don't have the $1,000? Well, then you're not a pro. You're not going to pass the test? Well, then you're not a pro. I mean, get past it. Get registered. Get legitimate. All right? I mean, just do it right, for crying out loud. Mediocrity doesn't reward anybody. Get her done, as they say here in Georgia. All right? I mean, at a bare minimum. Any other questions about CTAs, IBs, the registration process? Actually, Brent, what we need to talk about, you and me, is I'm the CTA, but I think I need to register as a CPO for the fund. So I'd like to know more about rolling that over, or changing it, or updating it, or whatever. Well, if you're incorporated as a trading business, there are advantages of things like if you do take a big loss, you can write it off from 1 year. You can write off your business expenses, your office. You could lease to yourself if you want to. I don't do that because I don't like red flags. But I have $15,000 worth of trading equipment. All of that is a tax write-off. When I fly out to Forex conferences and stuff, that's all a tax write-off. I mean, it's a business, right? So as long as it's legitimate business, I think there are some advantages. Also, you get the 60-40 split, which is really nice. I paid a lot of money in taxes last year, but I'm very happy if you look at the percent I actually paid. it's stupidly low. So if you're making a lot of money or if you're losing a lot of money, I believe it is advantageous for you to set up a company. And they're not crazy expensive to do. Okay. Futures traders are different. It's a different setup versus the spot Forex. But they are managed by the NFA. No, you don't have to be affiliated. No. That means like guaranteed. I have relationships with many brokers in the United States. None of them which guarantee boot campers. Where can you, when you get info and study, some web recommendations for the CTA? Janeda? Yeah. There's a couple of companies that, if you just do the search, boy, I can't quite, there's two companies that I bought material from. You can take an online class as well for the Series 3, Series 30. Series 34, there's not much out there right now. Brent, do you know for Series 34? I believe Brent set up an informative website about that. But yeah, Series 3, what is it? Securities Trading Corporation, so STC, look that one up. And then, what's the other one? The one that does college prep. Kaplan, look at that one. What is the tax rate for FX investment in the United States? Well, you can't use the word investment. If you're trading in under trader tax status, there are specific benefits, and it has to do with long-term and short-term. So, talk to my accountant kind of thing, but there's no doubt, no matter how you look at it, it's better to be registered. I'll give you a quick thing. Let's say you lost 30 grand last year. If you're just trading your personal money and you're not registered, then I think you can only write off something like $3,000 a year for 10 years to make up for your $30,000 loss. If I lost $30,000, I could write it off in 1 year as a loss because it's a business. When I say I mean my business, and it's a pass. So you have all the money you made or lost, of course, all your expenses, and then whatever's left over gets passed over to Wayne McDonald. So I'm telling you, it's absolutely phenomenal. I think I paid 7% taxes last year. I'm like, what? Effective tax rate. Yeah. And I made a lot of money. Now, the amount of money I paid was ridiculously high, but it's good. Well, I had a lot of write-offs. Plus, I have 27 kids. Or wait, no, 37. I always forget. Yeah, 37 kids. Yeah. Yeah. No, but, seriously, guys, it's not going to hurt you to get incorporated. I mean, what's the downside to that? You can't afford the money? Well, what's the downside of getting registered? I can't think of the downside. So if there's no downside, then it's all upside. But get her done. Be legitimate. You got people here to help you. Oh, I don't know. Again, you're going to have to talk to a tax professional. Agenda asked about the Series 34. Yeah, there really isn't a whole lot of training on the Series 34, and I believe it's a pretty, there's a couple of websites out there. I didn't see anything super fantastic. It's not a complicated test. When I get feedback from David Pegler, because he's already signed up, but there's so many professionals signing up because of the deadline that even the NFA is slow to get back to you, and I don't know if there's even enough testing facilities to get all the people that need a Series 34 to get their Series 34. And from what we can tell, there's not a whole lot of study material. So I asked Coach Pegler to, be aware of that and to, I don't know, maybe we'll develop our own training course or something. But there's not a lot out there from what we could see, and so he's going to have firsthand experience taking and passing the test. And again, I'm exempt because I've been a CTA for so long that there's no need for me. He has to stay till Friday. Might as well make myself comfortable, huh? What else is on your mind, friends? We had someone asking a lot of IB questions. Are you still around? I don't think so. I think that was AK, wasn't it? But I'm an IB as well, if you had questions about that, but I think he's long gone. Are they any good? I don't know them personally, so can't say. Rich, I'm licensed and registered in the United States, so I don't really work with offshore trading firms. And, I have a hard and fast standing rule that if they're not, licensed and registered with the NFA, they're not legitimate. So I don't know anything about them. I just don't know them. Introducing broker. Oh, yeah. What is an introducing broker? Okay. So, for example, I have a lot of relationships with currency traders because of FX Bootcamp. And so, if they, we refer a lot of those members of FX Bootcamp to various brokers. It's like a relationship building situation where someone says, hey, I like your setup. I want to use the GFT platform. So we'll say, okay, well, we'll introduce you to GFT. Okay? GFT kicks us some money, and I give it back to boot campers. And so we have a rebate program that helps compensate FX boot campers for their educational expenses. I believe FX Street has a similar situation, but just not with American brokers, because they're not licensed and registered by the NFA. I'm not licensed and registered by the FSA in Europe, so that's what an introducing broker is that FX Bootcamp could possibly introduce our clients to brokers. Yeah. So FX Street and FX Bootcamp have very similar, principles and values. We're both really good, and I say that quote unquote, good companies. We do good things to good people for good reasons. So FX Street makes a little bit of money and gives it back. We make money and give it back to boot campers. So, well, is it like an incentive program? It's more like to pay for advertising or something like that, if you want to look at it that way. Now, introducing brokers can very often do a lot more than that and actually be the person that manages the relationship. It's actually a brokerage license. Okay? So some IBs actually run very complicated businesses with salespeople on the phone, and they're calling you and saying, hey, have you shorted the dollar today or something like that. I mean, running it like a brokerage firm. But FX Bootcamp and FX Street are educational organizations, and so we have the relationships with brokers, we have the relationships with the traders, and we introduce them together, and then sort of share the wealth. Well, Jenda, I suppose we do. So, like, the reason why a broker would even do this with an organization like FX Street or FX Bootcamp is that we are educational and we do have very good relationships that are with the client. So, like, FX Bootcamp, for example, essentially holds the hand of a client for 15 hours a day, every single day. There's a value-added service there, because when a broker has a client open an account with them, they realize that there's a little bit of a conflict of interest of having their analysts give you advice, because it looks like they're trying to get you to trade, right? And yet, the reason why a broker would want to offer an analysis or education service is because they don't want you to blow up your account. Lots of traders throw $5,000 at a Forex broker, and 3 months later, blow up the account. Well, the broker would rather you sit there and grow your funds and trade profitably for years and years and years and years. So they'll look at FX Street and FX Bootcamp as a value-added service that would help their clients survive their first few years. Okay? Now, in the United States, if you want to be an IB, you're going to need to write at least a $50,000 to $60,000 check. Yeah, 3 minutes and we're out of here. You're going to need, because the minimum net cap requirement, net capital requirement, is $45,000, but actually you get warnings and stuff going off at the NFA. So really, I think it's unofficial net cap requirement. I don't think they actually tell you, but you get phone calls and stuff. So I think if you were to start an IB business right now in the United States, you need to register as an introducing broker. You need to pass, I believe you'll have to take the Series 3 as well. And then you'll need to cut a check for at least $65,000. Just for the right to be in business. And most likely that is not going to be worth it to you, because let me tell you, you're not going to make much money. Plus you got audited, you're going to get audited, you have to file reports and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I hope this session was very helpful to professional traders or would-be, soon-to-be professional Forex traders. I'd like to thank Brent Gillett and the Investment Law Group again, and of course FX Street. Love you, FX Street. Love you too, guys. Don't forget non-farm payrolls on Friday. Other than that, peace on earth. May the pips be with you. May your profits be above average. Cheers.